Hello guys, and welcome back to the cockpit of the 777. Today we are holding over Neras, our initial approach fix for the VOR 04 right approach into Nice, Côte d'Azur. So this is going to be a first in a series of videos regarding interesting approaches. And I've chosen this approach because it's a VOR approach followed by a visual fly-in segment into the runway 04 right. So I will leave the link in the description below with the approach charts, but basically what you're going to be doing is fly out of the initial approach fix, intercept the 24 DME arc of Nice VOR, fly that until intercepting radial 174 inbound Charlie Golf Sierra, and fly this radial to the mile 5. And that point is the missed approach point. From there on you will fly in visually into the runway 04 left or right. We will do the runway right. So this approach is apparently the preferred approach into the runway 04 at Nice, and that must be so because there must be a couple of powerful and rich people living near the coast, and these people don't want jets overflying their mansions, so I think that must be the reason why you fly in from the sea. And in fact the chart actually tells you not to overshoot the radial 174 westbound, and makes a lot of emphasis on not overflying the terrain. Also, upon landing we won't be using reverse thrust because we won't be requiring it. So very quick, airbag acronym is 80s. Let's see the
Lima, Foxtrot, Mike, November, airport information, Foxtrot, 1200, Zulu, weather, wind, 251, at 13, visibility, 10, sky condition, few clouds at 2,300, Lima, Foxtrot, Mike, November, airport information, Foxtrot, 120.
So apparently we have a little bit of tailwind. Just a minute ago when I was preparing for the approach we had wind straight in from heading 060, so apparently it's been rolling, but I won't change my approach now. Having up to 15 knots of tailwind on the 777 is manageable, it's accepted, and we'll just have to take that into account. Anyway, the runway is very long, 3,000 meters, we won't have any problems to slow down. Install the approach. The approach has been installed into the FMC already. I had to remember the old days when I used to fly the first 737 by PMDG. I had to input pretty much everything manually. I didn't have databases with approaches, and I had to remember those days again because this VOR approach for some reason is not in my database. So this approach is a bit of a pain to input because it contains, it has information from 3 VORs, Charlie Golf Sierra, Alpha Zulu Romeo, and also the Nice VOR. And there are some custom waypoints that had to be input. The intersection of one radial with the arc of another VOR, quite bizarre custom waypoints. But whatever, I've installed the approach already. Let's quickly review with the plan mode. Out of Neras we will be leaving into the DME arc 24 of Nice. We'll fly this arc all the way to radial 174 of Charlie Golf Sierra and fly the radial all the way to the missed approach point. At this point we have to be fully configured for landing at 150 knots more or less and 2,000 feet, and from there we will proceed visually into runway 4 right. Should we have to go around, we would turn to the right and join intercept and fly radial. Which radial is it? I believe it's the 136 outbound, and we would fly this radial outbound all the way to the DME 30 arc of Alpha Zulu Romeo. So quite a complicated setup. You see this, we have the magenta line crosses itself at 2 points, we have to be careful not to get messed up and try to follow the wrong one. And then from intercepting arc 30 we'll fly into, nail us into the published holding pattern. So that's that. Let's see the approach checklist. Descent recall is checked, then auto check auto brake to landing data. Let's have a look at our VREF 148, just one knot below the maximum VREF of 149. We are flying at a pretty high zero fuel weight, so we will be landing close to the maximum landing weight. And the minimums at 2000 feet barometric, which I set here on the primary flight display. Approach briefing has been completed. So now we do the approach checklist with altimeters 1005, which are set both on the primary flight display and on the standby altimeter. So normal, and we will leave this landing checklist sort of armed. There it is. So let's exit the hold, exit armed, execute, and see where we are. We are turning inbound now, so the airplane will leave the hold at Nelas and continue flying to Azur, to the 24 DME arc of Nice. Also, I will select our next altitude, 3000 feet, which will be flying all the way to, let me check the chart, all the way to the mile 8 out of Charlie Golf Sierra. There you see Charlie Golf Sierra is tuned and identified, Alpha Zulu Romeo as well. So I'm waiting for the Azur 01 waypoint to turn magenta, meaning active. There it is. Always like to fly clean maneuvering speed at the initial approach fix, and then throw out the flaps as required. And this approach today, since it's a visual approach and I want to be focusing on the flying, not the configuring, I want to be fully configured for landing by the mile 8 of Charlie Golf Sierra. This means when upon reaching Bispo, the intermediate fix, I want to be already with flaps 5, and at the flaps 5 maneuvering speed. At Bispo I will throw out the landing gear, the flaps 20, and then I will reduce to our approach speed. Approach speed is going to be 148 plus 5, 153. And full landing, full flaps for landing, flaps 30. So, the fact that we are flying in visual doesn't mean we cannot aid ourselves. You can help yourself, and you can build in the flying route on the navigation display. You have to have visual contact with the field, but that doesn't mean you are not allowed to help yourself with other tools. For example, I will, now that I'm at it, I will tune the ILS for right, just to help myself in the descent. The ILS for right is has a frequency of 110.7. So let's tune that. 110.7 in a course of 041. There it is. Now this doesn't mean we're going to be flying an ILS approach, it just means I will be helping myself with the glide slope or localizer of the ILS during my final approach. I'll probably be using the glide slope more than the localizer to aid in my descent. So let's go down to 3000 feet already. Now the hardware throttle must go to idle as well, because once the thrust levers are at idle they will revert to hold mode, and if my hardware is out of idle the engines will spool up again, which I don't want. There it is, hold. And now if I move my hardware I'll be moving the thrust levers because the servos are disconnected. So you see we are at the 24 mile, flying the arc nicely. (3,000 feet). Altitude, capture, and speed. So now the thrust levers are back alive again. FO side. This one I like to have my weather radar on. Now there's been some discussion in the forum regarding the use of LNAV for intercepting the final approach course, and LNAV is perfectly fine to be used in a non-precision approach. The problem is turning to final with LNAV engaged when you are flying an ILS approach. So if you're turning to capture the localizer in LNAV and you didn't arm the localizer before, it might be possible that you think you're flying on the localizer mode, but really you're flying LNAV and there might be a shift. So your plane might be flying offset from the runway center line, and you may be asking yourself why that is happening. So let me throw flaps 1, flaps 5 maneuvering speed, now it's becoming a bit shaky, flaps 5, and the flaps 5 maneuvering speed, there it is. Let me also set 2000 on the MCP. So, during a VOR approach, one of the pilots has to monitor raw data. There it is, our radial 174354 in the heading back. Bit shaky today. So we're flying 3000 feet to the mile 8.1, at which point we'll descending. Let me open the vertical speed window, check for zeros. And we are nicely aligned on the radial. (174) inbound, Charlie Golf Sierra. So since the visual segment is visual, I can't be flying on my map mode. I will be flying on this mode, VOR mode, till the missed approach point. Okay, flaps 15. Flaps 15 maneuvering speed. And let's start descending 2000 feet. Throw the gear to slow down a bit, flaps 20.
$2,500.
153 on the speed, 152. On the speed brake.
Approaching minimums.
Disconnect the autopilot. And now we have to start descending already. At some 800 feet per minute. There's the runway. Bit too high. Off.
1,000.
There's the runway. Landing checklist complete.
Approaching 04 right.
Have a bit of a crosswind at 11 knots. Turrets. Manual braking. So that was it. I think it went well. Hope you liked it. And if you have any suggestions for another interesting approach you would like me to fly, please post it below. Have a good one and bye bye.